In the darkest nights, we find our light. Battered souls, but we won't lose sight. Surviving together, never alone. Through every trial, we carry on. Surviving together, never alone. Through every trial, we carry on. Surviving together, we stand tall. United forever. Strength and courage will overcome. Oh, surviving together, victorious, and never alone. Hand in hand, we'll face the unknown.
We see you, we hear you, and we believe you. Hey, everyone. How you doing on this wonderful Monday afternoon now it is. Thank you for joining me. Impromptu live here at Surviving Together. Just had a few things that were on my mind this morning, and I just wanted to get them out. So welcome to Surviving Together, a safe space for trauma survivors to connect and build community on their healing journeys, as well as providing trauma-related education for all. And Krumel, thank you for joining me today. I hope you are doing well. I don't expect that there'll be many people here in the chat today, since this is just a very impromptu live and a very unexpected time for me, one during the day, during the week, and not on my normal Wednesday. But we will be having our regular Wednesday show. And I think we're going to be covering the Canadian hockey player story. If not with Sammy Yarborough with After the Bars, it will be at least giving the backstory, because there is a ton to cover with that story. It's in trial right now, but there's so much that happened before this trial began that I want to make sure that to cover all of it. But today I wanted to talk about trauma and this feeling of being broken because of it. Now, I can understand deeply the feeling of being broken, or that our spirit has broken, that we are somehow less than because of the trauma that we have been through. But remember, trauma is just something that happens to you. An event such as war, natural disaster, a difficult diagnosis, loss of a loved one, loss of a job. These can all be traumas, as well as chronic neglect, chronic abuse, the rape. All of these things can cause trauma. And it is an event that overwhelms our bodies, and we can't handle it. Now, what causes trauma in one person may not cause trauma in another person, based on their circumstances, their past experiences, their age, their development. There's so many different factors that go into whether we develop responses to trauma, or whether that event even ends up affecting us as trauma. But if you have survived trauma, if you have made it through that event, you're a survivor. And that mere fact of surviving, being on the other side of that trauma, means you're already healing. You're not broken. You're not dysfunctional. You may have difficulties coping. Trauma can leave emotional, mental, and or physical scars on us. And it is up to us how we navigate life after that. But all of these trauma effects, our body's responses to the trauma, are not evidence that we're broken. Those responses are our body's natural protection mechanisms. They are protecting our minds from situations that we cannot handle at that moment. They are reactions to how the trauma has physically affected us on a cellular level, and that's what I mean by physically, internally. So, looking at our depression, looking at our anxiety, looking at the insomnia and the nightmares, and instead of viewing them as evidence that we're broken, let's reframe that in our minds. And let's view it as evidence of our strength. Our body is protecting us, and we need to then navigate through that and unweave those responses, dismantle those responses, release that trauma from our bodies. So I say, from the moment we survive our trauma, we are healing. That is the beginning of our healing journey. You may not feel like you've gotten very far, and that's okay. Sometimes it takes a while before you recognize those healing steps. But when you're feeling your lowest, when you're feeling the most negative thoughts about yourself, practice self-compassion. Give yourself grace. Give yourself space to feel. Recognize that this is the natural reactions of ourselves. And every time we do that, we are taking back just a little piece of ourself. And as small as that may seem, that's a healing step. When we talk about healing, it doesn't need to be some, profound milestone to say, wow, I slept through the night. Now, certainly, that is healing. To say today, that slamming door didn't cause me to crawl out of my skin. I only had a slightly elevated heartbeat, but I didn't have a panic attack. Yes, that is healing. And that is a step forward. But all these little smaller moments, those spaces in time in between when we're feeling negative thoughts, the happiness we had at making a meal for ourselves, or actually just eating, regardless of whether you made it or not. If that's something that was difficult for you, and you ate a meal today, even if you didn't get 3 squares, that's a step. Celebrate it. Recognize it for what it is. Remembering that all healing is going to take step forwards and it's going to take steps back. Healing's not linear. And just because we take a step back doesn't mean we're still not healing. It's all part of our healing journey. Hi, Body. How you doing today? I hope you're doing a little bit better than yesterday. So, and sending hugs and love to both of you guys out there. I, after this weekend and after the live I did on Saturday, I sat thinking a lot about my healing journey. Not just because I had more to write with my chapter, but reflecting upon how disjointed it felt at times. That I needed to recognize that even during the periods of time where I was not actively seeking to heal, where I was just existing, I was still healing. I had needed that time to process, to be. My mental break was a trauma in and of itself. And I don't often speak of it in terms of that. But within the span of 10 days, I lost a job of 10 years, my husband of 8 years, and a home that I had purchased on my own. And I moved cities and moved back in with my parents. And so I broke. Mentally, I broke. But that was just the immediate aftermath. But I wasn't broken. I'm not a broken person. I wasn't a broken person because of that. I did feel that way for a long, long time, but I recognize now I had to go through every single step that I did to get to where I am now. Could that have been accelerated if I had a better support system? Yeah. Could that have been accelerated? Could I have possibly not gone through such the years of depression that I did had I understood the trauma better, if I had a better understanding of what trauma was, what trauma responses were? Absolutely, I could have. And that's why I feel so passionate about talking about this and educating people as to what trauma is, because there are so many events that can be traumatic that a lot of times people don't even realize they've been through a trauma. They say, well, it's just grief. I'm just suffering grief over the loss of a loved one. Yeah, absolutely. 100% you are. But depending on the situation, that can also be a traumatic loss. Depending on the situation, that cancer diagnosis can be a trauma in and of itself. And when we recognize things as such and we understand the fundamentals of trauma and healing from trauma, it can help us navigate that healing journey so much easier. I truly believe that so many people can be helped by merely recognizing our circumstances and recognizing what is going on in our bodies and why. Because I don't know about you, but I have always believed knowledge is power. I just didn't understand the things that I needed knowledge about. Hi, Tiff. How are you? Hi, Joe Della. How are you guys doing today? Thanks for joining me for this impromptu live. Just had a few things to say before I did my final preps. I've got court in a couple hours, so this won't be a long live. Probably not even a half an hour, but I wanted to spend a few minutes talking to you guys about this. I had written a few notes. So yeah, trauma effects can color our perception of ourself. And trauma effects aren't nice, right? They're not pleasant. So it's really important for us to recognize what is a trauma response, to recognize what we're feeling, what we're going through as a trauma effect, and understand that this is affecting the way that we think about ourselves. And it's at times like those that we need to then recognize that the mere acknowledgement of what we're going through as a trauma response is a step on your journey. That is a positive step on your healing journey. When we can see things clearly for what they really are. They're not reflections upon ourselves that we're worthless or broken or less than because we can't handle something. Remember, it's natural. Our body wants to protect ourselves, and this is the way it does it. So the next time you have that panic attack, or the next time you are feeling so depressed that the thought of even getting out of bed is difficult, look at it for what it is. Understand that, yes, you're going through a difficult time right now, but healing is possible. We've talked a lot about different ways to heal trauma. Therapy, support, and self-compassion, I truly believe, are keystones. And not everyone can do professional therapy. Not everyone can benefit from the same types of therapies. Not everyone can afford professional therapy. There are alternatives. We've talked about different soma techniques for being able to help ourselves. And so self therapy is a form of therapy. Those things that we can do for ourselves, whether it's breathing exercises or yoga or dance or art therapy, um, all things that we can do without professional intervention or professional assistance. If you're fortunate enough and can afford to have a trauma informed therapist, fabulous. I highly encourage you to do it. If the first one doesn't work out, find another one. Remember, their job is to help you. And if you don't connect with them, if you don't feel comfortable with them, if you guys aren't on the same page, you're not going to be successful with it. If you can't afford that, like I'd love to do EMDR. I can't afford professional therapy at this point in time. As of tomorrow, I've been out of a job for 2 weeks. And thank God I have this court fill in today because it's difficult. I get it. I understand. Although the migraines are gone, the stress is definitely still there. And I'm feeling it in my head. And even my hairspray is affecting me today. I'm very sensitive to smells, especially when I have any tension in my head, and I didn't realize how much the hair oil smelled. So I I understand feeling not worthy. I have skills. I'm an attorney. I'm a professional. I should not be struggling like this. But unfortunately, I am where I am. And I will spend the next several days, putting my information back out there and hoping that a project will land in my lap and or hoping that somebody will, see my resume and think that I'm, right for their position. So I'm also trusting in the universe to some degree. Your support system can be other people, family, friends, people you meet online, the connection that we make through channels such as this. It can also be whatever spirituality you have, if any. Not everybody has that. If you do feel some sort of spirituality, I encourage you to lean into it. My own spiritual journey has taken some twists and turns. Um, right now I think right now I'm sitting in the place where I I believe in something greater than myself. Whatever that is, I haven't a clue, honest. Whether that is just my higher self, my id in my brain, or whether that's something outside of me, I'm still not 100% sure because I am very analytical still. Um, but the universe always seems to come through for me when I really need it. So I'm trying to put on that positive trying to feel, I guess I feel that positiveness, right? Um, we get back what we put out in the universe, type of thing. All of all of what I've been through has helped me realize that I do have a purpose in this world, and I think that that is really also fundamentally key in helping us heal. I think when we do find a purpose, and it doesn't need to be a grandiose purpose. It doesn't need to be your life's purpose overall. I feel that I have found my life's purpose in helping trauma survivors. So no matter what I do for my day job, and even if I'm fortunate enough eventually for helping, you know, trauma survivors and doing trauma education, if I'm fortunate enough for this to become my day job, it can be those little things, finding your purpose in doing some volunteer work, finding your purpose can mean helping yourself, committing to betterment, consciously taking steps that will help your situation, encouraging yourself to live and not just exist. I think that doing so gives us a sense of hope. I firmly believe that we do get back more than we give out when we help others. The satisfaction that I feel in knowing that I've helped somebody else, whether it's physically or it's just by my words, by listening, that satisfaction, something blooms inside me. And I think that the more we do so, the more that bloom grows inside ourselves, and the more we can believe in ourselves, in something positive. Hi, Henry. Hi, See No Evil. Hello, Kim. I'm glad you guys could be here this afternoon. Thanks for dropping by. I wanted to look through your comments a little bit here and body 100%. And I have been here. Sometimes it's just as simple as brushing your teeth. It can be so difficult when depression, anxiety kicks in. Believe me, I have gone weeks at a time without showering. I'd done sponge baths, to keep, somewhat clean or whatever, but taking a full shower at the time where the fatigue and the depression was at its worst, the thought, even just the thought of doing that, seriously, I would just want to go back to bed. And when the fatigue was its worst, taking a full shower was such an accomplishment because I would need a nap afterwards. I was so exhausted. So, yeah, just brushing your teeth and saying, I've taken care of my basic cleanliness needs. For one, it just makes us feel good. And we feel better when we're clean. And I think that's also why, having some form of a purpose, setting goals for ourselves. And those don't need to be lofty goals. It can be the goals to, I'm going to brush my teeth every day. I'm going to shower once a week or every other day. They don't need to be big things. But the more we're able to do them and the more we're able to meet those goals, the stronger we feel. For 10 years after that mental break, I pieced myself back together. The one thing my child missed the most when we moved out on our own was having home cooked meals. And I had so wanted him to grow up with having home cooked meals and us at dinner together every night. And it didn't happen. I did not have the capacity, the mental capacity to work, pay bills, take care of myself, take care of him and his basic needs. Just, make sure he was fed, clothed, got to school on time, did his homework. I couldn't cook as well. It just was too much. Now that I'm in a much better place, and he's at a point in his life where he is just growing like a weed and putting on mass, I made a commitment to myself, or I should say, I set goals for myself that I was going to cook 2 to 3 times a week. And that would be a big enough meal that he could have dinner. He can have stuff to take to work for lunch the next day instead of just, a basic peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Gets protein. And week after week, as I'm able to do this, there's some weeks I don't make it. I make only one meal. I plan something for a day and I just can't. Even if I haven't worked that day, it's not from a time factor that I don't have time to do it. I just mentally can't. So I struggle as much with these things as you guys do. I get it. And I'm learning to love myself. It's hard. It's really hard. I don't think that I truly understand what it means to percent love myself yet. I'm really on the beginning of that journey. Um, like I said, I'm still dealing with trauma. I'm still dealing with the after effects. In a lot of ways, I think this book chapter is very helpful for me. It's been cathartic in some ways. It's brought up feelings that I haven't fully dealt with, that I didn't realize I hadn't dealt with. But it's also helping me to see my strength. And I think that gets lost for a lot of us because we only see the negative. We see the things that we haven't done. We feel the depression, we feel the anxiety, and we don't take the time to give ourselves gratitude. We talk about, taking time um, to celebrate those things that we're grateful for in life. But we often think, I'm grateful that I have a home. I'm grateful that I have a family. I'm grateful that I have this or fortunate for this or whatever. Be grateful for those little things, those little accomplishments. because those represent strength. Even if it doesn't feel like it, it does. It is. And hold on tight to that when you feel like you don't have much else. Hold on tight to that. Even if it's, I made it through another day, or I woke up today, which means you made it through all of yesterday. Maybe even when you weren't sure if you could go on for another hour because the pain of memories or feelings was just too much. The fact that you made it to another day shows your internal strength. Hold on to that. Hi, Chris. How are you doing this afternoon? Hey, Jen. Glad to see you. Jen says, yes, there's days I celebrate where I can get up. 100%. Exactly. Even though I rue most mornings just because of my cats and the hour at which they choose to get me up. But at least I did make it to another morning, right? Thank you, Sina Weevil. Thank you very much. I appreciate all of your podcasts. Thank you. I do it for you guys. Um, Henry, you must be on like the East Coast or the West Coast or something. If this is really early in the morning for you, either that or you work at night. I'm not sure. But Jodella, I'm so happy to hear that. He says, I got made redundant. My dad died and I was struggling. I was an angry man, and it took my close friends to make me aware. I sought counseling and got through that very difficult period in my life. Yeah, sometimes it does take somebody outside of us to realize where we are. And again, I think that when we don't have the knowledge, when we don't have the understanding of what traumatic experiences can do to us, we it's easier for us to just kind of drift through and get sucked down that negative hole. I hope that if anything happens in the future to any of us where we suffer another trauma, that it will be a little easier dealing with that, knowing everything that we know now. Maybe not right away, maybe not the next day or the next month, but that we won't have to suffer for so long because we understand what healing is about. We have the tools. Just, I know sometimes the implementation of all of that is the most difficult thing in the universe. And so asking for help for some people can be extremely difficult, but it may be the one thing that you absolutely need to do. Because there are times where we just can't do it by ourselves. And with all of the resources that are out there, you don't have to, right? There are so many communities online that have popped up that you can make connection through. Even if it's just finding that one other person who gets you, who understands what it is you're dealing with. sometimes that can be enough to give us that internal fortitude to be able to take more affirmative steps on our healing journey. Yeah, keeping yourself busy can be a great way to keep out of your head, right? Um, for some of us, it's real difficult because the inertia that can take over because of depression, um, because of trauma response, that stuck feeling, the lack of motivation. Um, I struggle with that on a near daily basis, especially if I don't have my day job. I think that's one of the reasons that I did this today, not only because I felt I had something to say today, but it got me out of my reading chair. The other thing that I started to do to combat that for myself is I allow myself to have my morning coffee and to sit and do whatever for up to an hour. And that's the time that I give myself. And then I found this, it's like 10-15 minute meditation about positivity and focus, um, determination, kind of setting your goals for the day type of thing. And it's real simple. It doesn't involve much more than breathing exercises and some positive affirmations and, setting intentions in your head. And it's not that that forces me then to do the things, but it's just enough to break my inertia because it's like pressing play on my day. And there are some mornings where I still don't get to it until 9, 10, 11, and I'm trying to get that more consistent. Um, for some reason, my phone is not cooperating with me at an 8 a.m. alarm because that's when I would like it. For the 8 a.m. to alarm should be my meditation alarm. Um, but I'm getting there. And the more days that I do it, the easier it's getting. So that for me, I've found extremely useful in combating that inertia because literally I could spend day after day after day just reading or listening to people reading stories. I can get lost in that sort of universe. Other people, it can be just scrolling YouTube and watching mindless video after mindless video. Having this channel certainly helps. Um, but there are days, even knowing that I have research to do for this, and I've got a list of things to do a mile long over here of things that I could get involved in. But sometimes even just looking at the list, it's just like, even if it's something that really should only take 5 minutes, it seems like it is a mountain of a task. But for some reason, for me, that meditation video is like pushing play on my day. It just makes everything a little bit easier. So I get what you're saying, see no evil, and I'm glad that that's something that that helps you. Um, he says, "What helps me is I remember I have a severe disability school in my neighborhood, and I remember that I have a very good life, and my bad day is nothing compared to those families who are in the severely disabled category." And Joe Della says, yeah, it helps to put things in perspective. There's always somebody worse off than us. And I 100% get that. I only want to caution that we don't compare in terms of our own traumas to other people's traumas. Comparing our situation like you're doing is being grateful, right? That's practicing gratitude. And that's great. That's a positive thing. It's when we compare traumas and go, well, people have been through worse. That's not a positive way to cope with our trauma. That is downplaying our own feelings, negating our own feelings, downplaying our own traumas. And it's ineffectual. And it really does the opposite of helping us. But what you are talking about is just remembering that, other people don't have what you have, and that's practicing gratitude. And that is positive. Thank you, See No Evil. I appreciate you subscribing. Kim says it's difficult to ask for help sometimes. That definitely is. Hi, Nay. How you doing? I'm glad you're here. I'm actually, I don't know if it's Nee or Nay. You're going to have to correct me on that. Have a great day, Jodelle. I appreciate it. Kim says, I used to minimize everything, and that is a way of coping. And it is a way of coping. It's just not a helpful one. It can get us through a period of time, but it's not going to help move us forward in the long run. Like I was talking about the difference between practicing gratitude and trauma comparison. Comparison? A comparison. Sorry, I'm just reading the rest of your comments here. Give me a quick second. Sino Wheel says, helping others gives me a chance to be there for others and not worrying about the things we can't control. I think, the serenity prayer is something that I do absolutely love. And there are definitely times where I say it to myself. If you don't know the serenity prayer, it says God, but you don't have to use God. But help me accept the things that I can't control. Oh gosh, now I can't accept the things I can't control. Only worry about the things you can control, basically. The saying's just not coming to me right now. And I know somebody's going to type it in and I'm going to go, yep, that's exactly how you say it. But I will definitely be worrying about something and trying to figure something out and have to remind myself that it is not in my control. I can't effectuate anything with that. And I think, this has been one of the tenets that I've really leaned on, especially moving from the child relationship, parent-child relationship with my son being a child to him being an adult, right? He's always going to be my kid. But there are things I can't control in his life. They're not my responsibility to control. I can give him my opinion, I can give him my advice, but I can't tell him don't do that. I can't tell him don't go there. It's his choice. He's an adult. So I have really, really leaned on that in my parenting skills, or in my parenting of navigating that change. Um, some people call it cutting the apron strings, but for me, it's really about growing our relationship to one of adult to adult, and him seeing me as a parent, but also as somebody who has had experiences. But I have to realize that, his experiences aren't going to be the same as mine. And just because I had an experience that led to X, Y, or Z, his same experience may not lead to that because he's in a different situation and he is a different person. So that's been hard. All right, Kim's got it. Yes, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I know the ending, and the wisdom to know the difference. So it truly it forces me to sit and think, is this something within my power? Should it be within my power? And I think that there are a lot of things that go on in our lives that, especially when we're feeling depression and we're feeling anxiety, and we're trying to still navigate being out in the world or having friendships or family relationships. And we can take on the world. It feels like everything is our fault. And when we're looking at setting boundaries with families, I think this is also an exercise in what we can control versus what we can't. We can control what's in our boundaries. Anything that happens outside those boundaries that we set, that's other people's stuff, right? We can't help what happens beyond that. I would agree with that to some degree. There was definitely, the older generations. Sinuel says, "I think I've been brought up to not show my problems and deal with them on my own." I think that was the era, and it's not only the era. I would also argue that it depends on um, your parents, your experiences. If no one's ever been there for you, you kind of learn that you need to do it on your own. No one's going to help. Um, so there are certainly people in the younger generations who feel that way, but there really is nothing wrong with asking for help. Um, I've always been raised that there's nothing wrong asking for help. Unfortunately, I have also learned through experience that n- there's not always going to be an answer or somebody willing to help you. Um, so that has created in me a very conflicting narrative inside my head when I have a problem as to whether or not to share it. So I think sometimes I've shared problems and it can often come across more as just complaining because I'm not affirmatively asking for help, but I also don't feel equipped to 100% deal with it myself. And I think when we do that on a regular basis, it can come across to other people as we're just complaining. We're just whining about our lives. When I think more times than not, really, it's a person not understanding or how to truly ask for help. It can be a very passive aggressive way to ask for help. And I do see it a lot in people who have been let down time and time again, um, when they've asked for help and the help hasn't either been there, or the person who has offered help doesn't come through. Kim says that our generation is the opposite of kids these days. They put their business out everywhere and broadcast it like the town crier. Would never happen back in the 60s, 70s, or even 80s. Yeah, social media has definitely, and it started obviously, MySpace and became Facebook and then became YouTube and TikTok in putting every aspect of our life out there. Um, and it does go to parenting, right? Um, I know my child watches TikTok, but he doesn't actively post. Um, he has Instagram, but there's only certain things that he posts about. And I am definitely not equipped to talk about it because I honestly don't know enough about the current day culture to really get into it. But there is a sense of much more of an openness, and I don't know if it's to just share everything, if it's a amount of putting ourselves out there. I don't know. Honestly, I just, yeah, I'm gonna skip over that because I don't think I'm qualified to speak about any of that. Um, but in general, Kim, you are right. People are much more willing to share lots of aspects of their lives. Hey, James, how you doing? All right, guys. Well, it's one. I gotta finish prepping for court, and I gotta leave here in an hour. So, thank you all who stopped by. Sino says I'm in the generation of the 70s and 80s. Yep, that's me as well. That's Kim as well. I think a lot of us are there. Um, Nothing like 80s hair. Golly, kind of miss those days. I was really good at it. Remember, you are worthy, you are valuable, and you are loved for who you are, just the way you are. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. I will definitely see you Wednesday evening at 6 p.m. Hugs and love to you all. Mwah. Surviving together, never alone. Enjoy the outro.
Through the fire, through the rain, we have walked through endless pain. Lord, we stand, we rise again. Stronger now, we break the chains. Surviving together, hearts open wide. are. Not just survivors, but warriors too. With love as our armor, we see this through. We see you, we hear you, and we believe in you. Surviving together, hearts open wide, lifting each other through every tide. The past may have shaped us, but it won't define. Together we heal, together we shine. We see you, we hear you, and we believe in you. Mm.